colleagues and friends, it's quite challenging to close the session about the challenges in CEE countries. And where is Andrew? I wanted to say that I would like to swap with my driver. Unfortunately, I don't have one. But with regards to this, I would like to tell a story. I also believe that good speeches does not happen without short stories. So in 2005, right after the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, quite remarkable events in the whole Europe, not only for our country. I was invited to work in the administration of the president, and in the first couple of days we were delivered business cards, and it was quite cool to feel myself a press secretary to the chief of staff of the president of Ukraine. But in the next several weeks I studied thoroughly the business card, and I realized that it was written chief of staff via U, not A. So after this status, you know, of being a press secretary to chief of staff to the president of Ukraine, I'm not anymore afraid of making mistakes, even here, giving a speech at this remarkable event. So actually, this morning I have to say 2 points only. My first point is democracy is weak. In the last 3 months in Ukraine, we had an opportunity to look very closely and very deeply into the eyes of the democracy. And what we've learned, that it's a very fragile creature. Because being armed with Facebook and Twitter and posters and flags, when democracy meets even one policeman armed with a bat, it loses. Democracy is weak because when it meets with raiders from the government that they're taking control over your business, when you meet with the judges that are taking decisions based on the loyalty to one man in the country, when it meets with the CEO of TV channels that are firing you just because of the fact that you fairly do your job, democracy loses. Democracy is weak, even and especially when it meets with a democratically elected president that is giving orders to kill people in the streets, peaceful Protestants, and democracy loses. And even very well-organized democracies and mature democracies, in this moment, they have not much to do. They have a lot of things to say, which is very good, but not very helpful. And when democracy expresses its deep concern and expresses its strong condemnation, democracy loses. Is there other arsenal can be used by democracy? Well, yes, sanctions. And Ukrainian case was quite a precedent when you probably know that United European Union members unanimously took decision to apply sanctions against the representative of Ukrainian government. And it was not an easy decision for the EU. But even in this case, democracy loses because these sanctions were applied when we already have 80 people killed in my lovely, peaceful capital, Kiev. And unfortunately, sanctions were not the preventive measures from the bloodshed, but rather were punishment for that. Democracy is also weak in front of people who lost their touch with reality. And this is a quotation from Angela Merkel that used this phrase talking to Obama president. And it's ridiculous from this, personal democratic point of view that being a democracy, you have to keep on negotiating with those people that from another dimension. It's another quotation from Angela Merkel. And there used to be many of them, these kind of people, and there are still those people that democracy is still keep on shaking their hands. And I'm sure these thoughts are not new, not for me, not for you, but I'm sure also that Ukrainian President Yanukovych and Russian President Putin refreshed these thoughts and these observations, not only in our heads, but in our heads. And I think that it's not only Ukrainian questions to be answered, but these questions now are very strongly and sharply raised in front of the Western civilization. And I don't know whether this agenda was developed, when this agenda was developed, I mean the title of this plenary session. And probably 3 months ago, I would have been talking about, you know, more efficient tools to monitor the parliamentarians in Ukraine, or applications to track whatever the spending of our government. But at the moment, I have to say about absolutely different things. And first of all, it's the architecture of the security system in not only Europe, but in the world. And let me remind you that Ukraine in 1994 surrendered its nuclear weapon, and in accordance to Budapest Memorandum, United States and UK and also Russia have to give its guarantees for its security. And in this, being now in these shoes, you know, I think of how, whether this paper will work at all, or it will remain just a sheet of paper, this memorandum, and how will it influence further negotiations, for example, with Iran, or further negotiations about disarmament of the nuclear weapon in general. And also, we have to talk about the challenges, about the destiny of the Eastern Europe region, whether it will become a grey political zone with economic stagnation, with civic destabilization and conflicts, or will it be able to realize these goals within, let's say, Eastern Partnership to become closer to European community? Also, we have to talk about future of the European idea. Did Putin and Yanukovych close these books of European Union? Does European enlargement have any perspectives? We also have to talk about possible iron wall between our worlds, between the West and the East, and its reality. I also was thinking 3 months ago that it's something, you know, very far away, war, bloodshed, but it's here. It's just next to you. And you have to understand that it's not a Ukrainian issue or Russian issue. It's our issue, Western issue, democratic issue. And answering all these challenges, trying to answer all these challenges in Ukraine, looking for answers to these challenges in Ukraine, we also clearly understand that history is not something that happened 100 or even 10 years ago, or even yesterday. History is today. And history is when we win a dictator just with Facebook, Twitter, posters, and our flags, despite the fact how many weaknesses they have. And history is when you create something that is later on will be called a social network, that will become the main channel of communications for the uprising civil society. And history, when you post on Facebook that one wounded man badly needed a special group of blood in one of the hospitals that is lacking it at the moment. And the next day, you have a line of 200 people standing, knocking the doors of the hospital to give its blood. Here is it's time for my point number 2. Democracy is weak, but we are here to create this history every day on our personal level to make it stronger, and we can do it. I just want to finish this my speech. I was checking the news today in the morning, and I learned that we had another girl in the hospital that was harshly wounded during the events in Ukraine died. She was 28 years old only, and this is the person that could have stood here, you know, with us and could have talked to you, especially during this wonderful event with this name, Personal Democratic Forum. So I just would like to ask you, and I'm sorry to finish it at this sad note, but I would ask you to commemorate all those victims that we had in Ukraine fighting for this personal democracy with a minute of silence. Thank you.